Okay, so today I'll be going over Act 5.1 in Macbeth. This is Lady Macbeth's somnambulism scene. As you can see here, I've typed up, a few words that you might that you can use for your paragraph, which you may need to write for this essay. Now, some essay questions which you could be asked are as follows. You could be asked a theme question on this on your exam, and you could also be asked a character question. Now, in the 2023 examination, there was actually a question on Lady Macbeth's character. So I assume that it won't come up in the 2024 series or in the 2025 exams. So if you could also use the paragraphs that I'm about to show you in a theme question. So one theme question you could use one theme question which you could talk about Act 5.1 in would perhaps be ambition. You could say that how ambition has deteriorated from the start of the play all the way till now in Act 5, where she is now consumed by guilt. So you could use that. And here I've also typed up some motifs and imagery you could mention. So one motif would be blood. You could talk about how she constantly has this imagery of blood on her hands due to her heinous crime which she has committed, obviously that crime being assassinating King Duncan. So yeah, I'm gonna get into this paragraph very short. So essentially, here's the waggle that I found. A waggle is basically what a good one looks like. And you could use this in your essay. So it says here that in Act 5.1, Lady Macbeth's somnambulism scene, Shakespeare presents her as a powerless, psychotic woman. First of all, by me mentioning in Act 5.1, I'm showing to the examiner, specifically this applies to people who are doing the EDUCAS exam board, I'm showing to the examiner that I am tracking the play. So by me saying from at the start of every single paragraph, by me saying in Act 1 point whatever all the way to Act 5, I would get marks for that, because it shows that I know the plot line of the play, and I know where it starts to where it ends, obviously. So I would get marks for that. So I highly recommend you use this. Then as you can see previously, where I showed you on the vocabulary list the word somnambulism, I've used this word here to get marks for eloquence, but as well as me showing communicating my ideas in a coherent manner. So here I'm communicating in a coherent manner. And again, just this first line, I'm picking up a lot of marks because I'm saying that I'm mentioning the writer's name, and by me doing that, I am showing to the examiner that the writer is basically using Lady Macbeth to portray some kind of message, and he's using her as a construct here. So let me just zoom in. Then this from the start of the sentence in Act 5.1 all the way to heinous actions, this will be my point. So this is my point. Your point does not have to be this long. It's only if you are aiming for the very top grades. All right. And after I've made my point, I then say, isolated and neglected by Macbeth, as the audience are guided through Lady Macbeth's irrational actions. And then I say, and I go on to mention the quote, she has lied by her continually. Now, the technique which I've used that is so good here is that I have used the word isolated and neglected by Macbeth, and then I've even mentioned the gentle woman and the doctor. Now the reason why this is grade 9 worthy is because I'm contextualizing my quote. So here I'm contextualizing my quote. I'm telling the examiner where the quote came from, who said it, how it was said, and why it was said. So I've also used adjectives, isolated and neglected, to describe how she is feeling in that moment of time. Also, I've mentioned how the audience are guided into her irrational actions through the witness accounts of the gentlewoman. Okay, so here you could you would include, so far we know that we include a point and we contextualize our quote before we mention the quote. We don't just say the quote blah blah blah. We contextualize the quote. We say where the quote comes from. There is where we get our marks. Continuing on, then we say that this evidence changed from her earlier daring behavior in Act 1.5. Now this is the reason why this paragraph would get a lot of marks here. So I'm linking back to her in Act 5.1. So I'm linking back to her in Act 5.1. You don't always have to do this in every single paragraph. You don't always have to constantly keep jumping back to the start of the play. I just recommend doing this in certain paragraphs, especially in Act 5. Okay, so then I use a supporting quote. So this is a supporting quote. Then I analyze the supporting quote and combine that with my original quote. So light, I use the example of light here. Then I mentioned the technique of the word light. So it's displaying symbolism of God's guidance. I could also have perhaps improved on this and said this is a form of religious imagery. So just based on this one paragraph, we now know how to construct. You now know how to construct your own paragraph within every single act. So you'd start off with, let me just create a line. So start with a point. So in this case, this yellow and green bit, that was my point. Then you contextualize the quote. So say where the quote comes from. Then you analyze the quote. Then you you give a brief meaning of that quote. After you've given a brief meaning of that quote, so I'll give you an example here. After I gave my quote, she has lied by her continually. I give a brief interpretation of that quote by saying this evident change from her daring behavior in Act 1.5. So brief analysis. Then you add in your supporting quote, and then you zoom in, and then you bring in your techniques such as metaphors, symbolism, etc. So this is for Act 5.1. And here I've also written another paragraph. So you could just have a read of this, and perhaps you could take some of my points and add it to your own.